Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hello, I am so excited to introduce my next guest. I have with me Rebecca Oppenheim, who is the co-founder of nextOPP Search, a national recruiting agency that is also really passionate about giving back. She recruits top talents for companies from early stage development all the way up to global leaders across multiple business verticals and in the C-suite as well. In addition, her company is built on a one-for-one model. For every candidate hired, they donate career coaching services to a survivor of domestic violence trying to achieve financial independence. And they call that Hire One, Help One. So, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So you just heard me give the overview of what your company does. I'd love to hear from you about your background. Give us a quick overview of what you do and how did you come into this role?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm an executive recruiter and the co-founder of nextOPP Search. And basically, companies turn to us to help them recruit across all corporate service verticals. So that means sales, marketing, admin, HR, operations, customer success, and all the way up to C-suite positions.
Wow. Okay.
And I entered executive recruiting a little over 5 years ago. Actually, my now co-founder hired me to help build out a Greenwich, Connecticut office for a national agency. We immediately clicked. We quickly realized how valuable this skill set is of, writing a resume and helping people with interviews, maybe negotiating a salary. And it's really something I think that can kind of bring people out of some tough times. So we always really wanted to figure out how to give that knowledge and expertise back to people that would really make a big difference for. So we left together 3 years ago to start our own company, knowing that we were always going to take the time to figure out, how do we build this kind of into the DNA of our company. And then just this year, as you mentioned, we launched Hire One, Help One, which is now our program. So for every candidate that we place kind of on the for-profit recruiting side, we then donate career coaching services to a survivor of domestic violence.
Wow. And so you, in addition to placing people, it sounds like you're helping them. Tell me what other services you provide to job seekers.
Sure. So we're kind of, a little bit separated between we're a for-profit, for-purpose company. So on the for-profit side, we are a national recruiting agency.
Okay.
Typical to other agencies that you would find that will partner with companies to help them, recruit either difficult positions or maybe they're a high growth company. Maybe they need support for their in-house recruiters, things of that nature. And then on kind of the giving back side, the Hire One, Help One, we offer career coaching services to these survivors of domestic violence. And that's very case by case. We work with domestic violence crisis centers who, basically also offer, counseling, mentoring, shelter, legal advocacy, all of that. We fit in with those services and can help them tailor their resumes or job search strategy or, mock interviews, whatever it might be for what they need kind of at their point.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's fascinating. So I imagine you see, from front lines all the way to C-suite and across industries, you are seeing all levels. Do you find that there are a couple of common challenges facing, people that are in the job hunt mode right now?
That's a great question. I think actually technology, hands down, is the best and worst thing to happen to job seekers. I think
I agree.
Really, on one side, information and people in hiring positions are more accessible than ever before. You can reach out to people at companies that you might not have been able to. And with platforms like LinkedIn or, even just like Inc. magazine or Forbes, whatever it might be, you can access information that might really help you in your job search. However, on the other side of that, we have things like applicant tracking systems or ATS, as people kind of refer them, Google searches, social media sites that make, every single person much more than a resume. And that kind of, I think, has like its benefits as well, but you need to be aware of it. So what I always tell people is I think the key is to understanding how to make technology work for you. So not only using it as a platform to reach out and target these ideal jobs and companies, but understanding that it is also a window really for those companies to kind of look through and understand more about you, that you are much more than a resume. So, to let people in a little bit more. And I really find that people who understand that kind of have a competitive advantage.
That's interesting. A tool and a window.
Yeah.
Do you find that since you work, I'm sure, across all age groups, do you find that the younger, the newer job seekers have embraced that, or do they have their own set of problems?
I think they have their own set of problems, to be honest, because I think with some of the people starting out in their careers, they're so used to sharing on social media sites and not being aware of kind of what's out there about themselves, that maybe they need to pull back a little bit or just take a look at, what they're commenting on or what their brand.
Right. Control what's out there.
Yeah, and brand is really just a fancy word, honestly, for reputation. It's just what is your online reputation? Whereas maybe people who have spent 20, 30 years of their career without sites like LinkedIn maybe need to use it a little bit more. And maybe people are starting out in their career, maybe pull back a little bit. I don't know. It's just it's a different lens, I think, of what people are.
Yeah, I always wonder what happens when all of these Gen Zers become the bosses. They have grown up sharing everything. Will they feel differently about what people post than people do now. But you're right, it is a double-edged sword. Yeah, I know, we'll have to wait. But it is, it's a tool and a window. You're so right. And you can access anyone, anywhere, any company. You feel like you're like the world is your oyster in some ways. So maybe this is sort of answering the same question, but do you find that anything that clients are most surprised by, on either the job seeking side or on the company side as they're going through this process?
Yeah, so our clients are actually the companies, and I would say counter offers, actually. Now, I don't really know if they're necessarily surprised by it, but it's definitely a curveball, and it's happening very frequently these days. I mean, unemployment rates are, at an all-time low, and it's getting very difficult to kind of attract and retain top talent. So when I speak with job seekers, when we start working together, I always mention it early in the conversation, have you thought about what would happen if you got a counteroffer? And I mention it to the companies as well, you want to prepare for it because it is happening across the board.
Is it similar to house hunts? When it's a good market, people get into bidding wars.
It definitely is. I mean, companies, if they have the budget and can, up their benefits or maybe more parts, paid time off or just their salary, they're going to want to keep those people that they've been adding to their company. And so it's tough. It definitely is similar, I think, to like a bidding war, except obviously instead of houses, we're talking about people's lives.
People's lives. Is your advice to both sides that everything is on the table, or are there certain parts of an offer that really you should not even try to negotiate?
Yeah, in regards to counteroffers?
Yeah.
Or just in general?
In terms of counteroffers.
Yeah, I'm actually really not a fan of counteroffers at all.
Really?
Because if someone is looking for another job, and this is something I usually talk about in our first conversation, I try to get to the bottom of why are you looking? What are you not feeling fulfilled about or valued? Or, what are the reasons that you're kind of interested in seeing what else is out there? And if you get to the point where another company is interested in you so much and you're interested in them because you've gone through multiple rounds with them, that we're now at an offer stage, you need to remind yourself of what that company has to offer that you aren't currently getting. And when you bring up to your current employer, hey, I have this offer for, X amount, and they come back and they say, oh, we'll give you that promotion that you've been wanting, or we're going to pay you $20,000 more, or you just want one more week paid time vacation, done, no problem. But isn't that kind of awful that in order to get what you've deserved all along, you had to say that you were leaving?
You had to say leaving, yeah.
And how long is that going to last? Because are they going to think that then you're kind of one foot out the door?
Right.
Will it really change your relationship with them? There's really a lot you have to consider when you do get those counter offers. And I've yet to actually see it work out for the long term for someone.
Okay. When you were first saying counter offers, I was thinking of negotiation tactics just with the initial offer. So you're talking about when you have an offer and then you play one company against the other.
Yeah, and you're not even doing it on purpose, but it is similar to still a bidding war because a lot of times you have two people trying to get the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So what advice do you have for job seekers that are thinking about a career move? You talked about, really think about why you want to leave. What other advice do you share?
Yeah, I would say, before you start applying to positions, try to gather as much information as possible. So strike up a lot of conversations. Obviously, probably not with your current coworkers, but past coworkers, past managers, friends, people in your industry. See if you can get on the phone with a recruiter that might recruit in your industry. See if maybe talk to some career coaches. Understand what the market is like, maybe what has changed since you last looked for a job, and really get a sense of what your worth is in the marketplace. And money, talk about money, especially honestly for women, we really need to talk about it more and figure out, where we fit kind of as our value, everyone, before we really start applying. I think all of this information before you start the process is really powerful.
Do you think women have a harder time with bringing up the money topic, or
I don't know
justifying their value?
Have a harder time, but I can definitely say that there have been numerous studies, and just in general, we talk about it less. It's more of a taboo subject, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And the more we talk about it, the more information we have, the better equipped we are to make sure that when we apply to that next position or negotiate our next salary, we know more of what we're worth, not just in our mind, but based on market knowledge.
That's so true. I think about my clients. When women are desperate for change, it's usually about culture, or there's money is often not mentioned. But with the men I've worked with, while they do mention those other factors, a lot of times it's just bottom line, look, I haven't gotten a raise. I'm underpaid. And they're not ashamed to admit that. Yeah. So really, to get the intel, know what you're dealing with before you make the leap is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And then also, then you can make the strongest first impressions, because first impressions are really important. And so, gather all that knowledge before you really start putting yourself out there. Now, that does not mean your resume is going to be perfect, because they're never perfect, and can't let it hold you back. But just, empower yourself with that knowledge before you start speaking to new people, new companies, applying for positions.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That way you sound educated when you're having those conversations.
Definitely.
What about people that are already looking? They haven't, they leapt in without having taken your first part advice. How would you recommend they sort of regroup? Because that's who I get a lot of.
Right. If they're stuck. Yeah, it can be really tough. I think the best thing you can do, honestly, is just try to switch it up. So if what you're currently doing is not working, or you feel like it isn't getting the traction that you think it should, try to diversify your strategy. So if you're applying to a lot of positions, try focusing more on networking. Reach out to people at companies that you admire. Try to get them on the phone for 15 to 20 minutes to ask them about the culture or their career path. Or maybe your resume needs to be reworked. Maybe it's not really a clear story and being passed over. So try to book some career coaches, or, get some advice there. Many of them do free consultations.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you end up really liking one and the prices are within your budget, fantastic. But
at least you've gotten some free 2 cents out of it.
And and same with recruiters too. Just see who you can talk to. And then also, if you are unemployed and you have the time, try talking to people in real life. Technology can really only get us so far. And, go to events in your neighborhood, try to strike up conversations. You never really know where your next job is going to come from. And I tell this to everyone: if you don't tell people that you are open to opportunities,
they'll never know.
To them, your neighbors, they won't know. And maybe they want to help, or maybe they just have an introduction that can get the ball rolling, but they can't help you if they don't know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I feel like we're getting close to the holidays here, so there's a lot of opportunities to get in front of a lot of people with all of these parties that people tend to get invited to.
That's very true. Yeah.
What about candidates that have a really, really diverse skill set and they want to be considered for a lot of different industries or a lot of different roles? How do you counsel them?
Yeah, well, I think being versatile is really important. Unfortunately, if you are good for a lot of things, you might be being passed up on for interviews. So I think you really have to get specific. And I run into this all the time, of people who are very interested in a lot of different industries, or feel that they could be really great at different things. Unfortunately, if that is written into a resume and being sent out, it's very general. And there's always going to be someone who's being specific that might be a better fit. So you might not be getting those interviews. So actually, this just recently happened. I was introduced to someone, a sales leader, whose company was just acquired. He was looking for his next role. He had an amazing background, and he had experience in a lot of different industries. So it was really great that he wasn't industry specific. However, we really had to take the time to figure out really what is his competitive advantage and what is he better at than all the other sales leaders that are competing for the same role. And so, we talked it through, and we actually landed on the fact that he is an expert at building new business verticals. So every company that he had worked for, he had built up new business lines. And so that made sense. So that's what he leads with. That's in the summary of
his
resume.
Okay.
And it's not even niche, really. It's just, oh, that's the guy that's really great at building up new business lines. Now we can reach out to, huge global corporations that might be going into a new business vertical. He can reach out to startups that are maybe just gaining traction. So he's not industry specific, but what is he really good at? So that he can be called for those interviews kind of over other people.
But he has a focus that allows him to cast a wider net.
Right. If he didn't want to say, okay, I'm only going to go after a financial services firm,
right,
which wasn't where he had worked. He'd worked in a lot of different industries. Okay, so if you're not going to be industry specific, then what are you an expert at? Why would they call you instead of someone who has the industry experience for the last 20 years? So you got to lead with something stronger than other people.
Now, how do candidates come to you? Do you find them through LinkedIn? And so would someone that appeared to be completely unfocused ever even come to your attention? How do you find your talent?
Yeah, so companies really come to us that need help with the recruiting. And then we do a mixture of a lot of things to find the actual candidate. So between, inbound recruiting, which is when you post jobs and they're coming into you and you're looking at the submissions and resumes, we obviously tap into all of our networks, and then also proactively sourcing. So we're going after certain skill sets or industry experience, things of that nature of candidates that we feel would potentially be successful in the role that we're working on.
And is LinkedIn your source for that sort of sourcing, or do you go beyond that?
We do go beyond, but I would have to say the majority of it is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So one of the reasons why it's so important, when you're job searching, you don't want to think, okay, if I make my LinkedIn perfect, the recruiter's going to come to me. Because the chances are that's like being discovered at the mall, right?
Right, exactly.
It's probably not that great. However, even when I get a resume in of someone who has applied for a position, I'm looking them up on LinkedIn to kind of learn a little bit more about them. So that's kind of what I was talking about with like the window. It just makes you more of a human being rather than just, a list of paper, which honestly I think helps with kind of combating the biases that exist. So, if there's a gap in your resume, or unfortunately if you're over or under a certain age, or whatever it might be that exists in the world today, by being more than just one single piece of paper, you can show people who you are, what you stand for, more of your brand. Your chances of getting called for that interview are much higher.
That's a really good point. Well, speaking of barriers to entry, you talked about, employment gaps. Age discrimination is something that I am always dealing with. It used to be that it was people that were too young. Now it's people that are too old. What are your thoughts, and how do you think the job seekers are in the greatest position to mitigate those?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely real, unfortunately. And I do think more so now with experienced workers.
Really?
The biggest problem facing companies right now is attracting and retaining talent. It's a really tight market, but I honestly think there's a lot of untapped talent out there. Experienced workers have so much valuable insight to lend to companies. And this is definitely something I think about a lot as I grow my own company as well. We're a decently small team at the moment, but our employees span 3 generations. So I'm a millennial. My co-founder is almost 15 years older than me, and one of our employees is actually in her 60s. And we all learn to recruit very differently. And we always challenge each other's ideas to make sure that, we're doing things the best way possible. And I love that.
I love that too. Yeah.
It all comes down to diversity, right? And there are numerous studies that show that diversity is proven to foster innovation and be better for business. It just is. But it doesn't just mean that gender, race, sexual orientation, it's age too. I mean, the idea, I think at the core of diversity means really bringing people together who share your company's values and mission, but have different perspectives, whether it's because of the way they were brought up or whatever it might be, they have different perspectives. And age really plays into that because we were raised in different decades.
No, it impacts your lens.
Exactly. And I think the companies who get this, honestly, are going to have a really big competitive advantage because talent is tight right now and to find the best people. So the ones who are tapping into that market, they're going to get ahead.
And how do you recommend that someone who's experienced try to break past, or is it possible for them to break past companies that are maybe not embracing that just yet? Or do you recommend that they skip and go on to another company because they're wasting their breath?
I mean, I hate to ever tell people to skip and go on to another company because when you're looking for a job, if you don't have one, I mean, it's just not realistic advice. At the same time, if you're not going to be valued for the perspective and experience you bring to the table at a company, it's not going to be a good fit. You can't really force a company to appreciate you. So it's an unfortunate thing to say, but you have to keep looking for the companies that will appreciate your skill set, so that you feel like you have a home there and you feel valued. We all really want to feel valued at work.
No, you're right. What's the best way for people to determine if a company is more embracing of different generations or more biased or more closed about it?
Yeah, I think it's usually pretty clear through the interview process, to be honest. I think companies, when they're interviewing a candidate, it's kind of a way to look to see what type of person they are and how would they behave if they were in that job. And I think it goes the other way too. As you interview with a company, you get little insights into how they treat you and what your experience is like and who are the different executives or people that you're met with and what's the turnover like or their culture, what's their brand. I mean, the same way employers get to Google search you and find you on LinkedIn and, figure out who you are as a human being from all of these tools, you get to do that with companies now too.
That's true. That's very true. Well, that's good to know. But I do feel like the going online and searching reviews is great, but sometimes you're right. You have to sort of have your own eyeballs on there to get a feel for how they're treating you, how they seem to appreciate the experiences that you're sharing and all of that to get a sense for where they fall on this issue.
Yeah. And, bring it up. Find out about like the turnover, what the culture's like, or do they have people from all different ages on the teams, or, is the employee workforce diverse? And, actions and who is actually at the company speak a lot louder, I think, than kind of what you write down is your culture.
That's true. You're right. You can do a LinkedIn search for who works there and get a sense just by looking at faces.
You can. Yeah. You can do a lot of research on companies today.
Yeah. No, you're right. The upside of technology. So, one or two tools that someone who's job hunting absolutely cannot be without. What would you say?
Okay, I think I would say two. One, I think LinkedIn. And two, I think community. Okay, so LinkedIn. Yeah, so LinkedIn, I think just, what I mentioned earlier about technology, to use it as a platform to proactively reach out to people, apply to positions, network, but also to use it as a window for people to look in, learn who you are, what excites you, your passion. I'm a big believer, really, that kind of the energy that you put out there is what you attract. And if you're really excited about something and you don't put it out there, no one's going to know that about you. So you can really use that. And then I'm a huge believer in community as well. New relationships are only really part of the puzzle. And whenever personally I've ever gone through a transition or, I didn't know what was next, I've always pulled a lot of strength from my community. And now community can mean something different to each person. So it could be your neighborhood, it could be your family, it could be like a church group, or even a group of people that you do keep in touch with, maybe via social media, Facebook, whatever it might be. Those are really the people that are there for you. Those are your constants. So when you feel like you're going through a transition or, a troublesome time, I always remind people to tap into your existing community as well.
It sounds like, you're saying people need a support group.
Exactly.
In whatever, job search is hard, and going it alone could be so isolating, and you need someone to share those downs with.
I think so. And you'll be there, how many times have we been there for other people who are going through it?
Right.
It's all about returning that strength.
No, I agree. Well, gosh, your company's done, and you have done so much in such a short time. 5 years is a blip for, some people. Tell me what is next for you all.
Yeah, so we're excited. We just recently crossed the 6-month mark for the Hire One, Help One.
Oh.
And yes, we're just in the Fairfield, Connecticut County right now with Hire One, Help One, even though we recruit nationally. But because we work with the domestic violence crisis centers on the ground, that really has a location. So our vision and goal is to scale that up on a national basis. So honestly, anyone who finds themselves in that situation knows where to turn for free career coaching services. So we're about to open a second location actually in Charleston, South Carolina.
In South Carolina? Oh my gosh.
My co-founder just recently relocated down there, so that should be off the ground soon. And, just keep really scaling, so growing both sides of the business together.
Oh, that's wonderful. Gosh, that's so exciting. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. You've given really unique insight into this, and I love what you're doing.
Thank
you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SCIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.